Hello, you found your way to module number 2, assessing your financial situation and building your team of the transitioning land to a new generation land transfer training. My name is Jerry Cosgrove. I'm Farm Legacy Director for American Farmland Trust, and I will be walking you through this presentation today. You can find links to worksheets and information that accompany this video in the description below. And in addition to these resources, we have also trained staff who would be happy to help you in whatever stage you are in your transfer process. Please look in the description below to find out how to connect with us. This module is the second of 5 consecutive modules or workshops in the Transitioning Land to a New Generation curriculum, which is designed to help you gain the basic skills needed to participate in a farm, ranch, or land transfer process. This model prepares you to assess your financial position and needs, and the position and needs of the other party, as well as identify key advisors to support the transfer process. Our learning objectives include assigning values to the assets included in the transfer, defining key financial terms, identifying common financial statements and learn how to use them, and describing different kinds of advisors and what to look for when hiring them. This curriculum was created by American Farmland Trust with support from a national educational team of advisors and a group of subject matter experts. It was made possible by a grant from the USDA Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program Award number 220-494-3325, with additional support from Farm Credit and the members of AFT. This module prepares you to assign values to assets included in the transfer and to make financial assessments to inform your farm or ranch transfer. You will learn to define key financial terms, identify common financial statements and learn how to use them, and describe different kinds of advisors and what to look for when hiring them. You will also assess your needs and assets and those of the other parties involved. There are a series of steps in a farm or ranch transfer process. We have broken it down into 10 steps. You will likely take most, if not all of them, but it is not a linear process. So while a certain amount of order makes sense, you will likely find you move forward and back several times before you are done. One of the prerequisites to this module is completing the SMART Goals worksheet from Module 1 of the Land Transfer Training. If you are interested in completing the associated materials as we go along, you may want to complete that worksheet and take a look at the SMART Goals discussion worksheet before continuing with this recording. Setting useful goals can be difficult. They should be simple, yet specific enough to clearly define what you want to accomplish. They should cover the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, as well as how. Many people use SMART Goals framework to set useful and actionable goals. SMART goals are specific, well-defined and clear; measurable, because when you measure results, you know whether or not you have achieved your goals; attainable and realistic enough that you can achieve them with time and effort; results focused, meaning they include the resources, knowledge, and time you need to reach your goals; timely or time-bound, meaning linked to a realistic time frame. A goal without a timeline is just a dream. Let's work through an example. A broad goal might be to inherit my grandfather's vegetable operation. That's a worthy goal to start, but it doesn't answer the deeper SMART questions. To make it more specific, you might refine the goal to be to inherit my grandfather's operation and produce a seasonally diverse mix of fruits and vegetables to sell at farmers markets and to local schools. To make that measurable, you might add earn an annual gross income of $150,000, increase crop yields 5% by improving nutrient management, and increase sales by $25,000 by adding 2 farmers markets and a local school to the marketing portfolio. Then check to make sure these are all attainable. Even if it's a stretch, could you accomplish these things in 2 years? What resources do you need? Do you have them? Or what else do you need to get the help that you need? Finally, make sure you have a realistic time frame. For example, to increase crop yields by 5% next year by improving nutrient management and pest control, or to increase sales by $10,000 by reaching out to at least 25 new sales prospects in the coming 6 months. Now that you've clarified your current situation, where you want to go, and what you need to get there, it's time to think about how much it will cost or yield and whether you can afford it. As a reminder, assets are all kinds of things that have value. Financial assets are things of value owned by individuals, corporations, and organizations. They can be tangible or physical things that you can touch, like land, buildings, and equipment. Tangible assets also include financial resources like a bank account. Intangible assets are non-physical things like trademarks, market share, customer loyalty, and the skills of managers and employees. Today, we are going to focus on financial assets, or assets that can be reported on a balance sheet. We are also going to touch on transfer of management if you are involved in a farm or ranch business transfer. Financial assets include things like cash and savings, land and buildings, crops and livestock, equipment and inventories, and intangible property such as an established brand or clients list. In the first module, we talked broadly about what's involved in a farm or ranch transfer. Is it just raw land or land with structures like a house, barns, sheds, or fencing? What about the equipment? Or does a transfer include some aspect of the existing farm or ranch business? The complexity of the transfer depends in part on the answers to these questions. Transfer may just include land and/or other tangible assets. Tangible assets are physical property like buildings, fencing, equipment, and so on. It may also include intangible assets like the business model, the brand, customer list, patent, etc., which are not physical property. Intangible assets generally are valued only when they change hands, or the transfer may include both. Transferring raw land and other tangible assets is the most straightforward type of transfer. The incoming farmer either leases, purchases, or receives a gift or inheritance of land, buildings, equipment, and so on. For leases and sales, it boils down to the price of the assets. Reaching an agreement on these values will be the focus of your conversations. For gifts and inheritances, you may need to determine the value of assets for tax purposes or to divvy up assets among family members and other heirs. You can estimate the value of land by obtaining data from the local property tax assessor, comparing recent sales of comparable land, or consulting with your local extension office, which often generates rental rates for specific areas and/or commodities. Also, USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service, known as NASS, which conducts the census of agriculture, also publishes land values and cash rents annually. Finally, you can consult with a local real estate agent familiar with comparable sales and/or local rental rates. To get a more definitive assessment, you will need to hire an appraiser. Transferring an ongoing business is more complicated. If you're involved in a transfer that includes the business, be sure to assess whether the existing business matches your incoming goals as a farmer. For example, if you as an incoming farmer want to grow a different crop, like converting from raising milk to raising vegetables, there may be a mismatch. You may not be able to use the current infrastructure, even though the landowner thinks that the assets have a lot of value. These are sunk costs, money that has already been spent and cannot be recovered. Landowners may be able to avoid sunk costs by salvaging assets or selling them to a third party. Even if there is a match in terms of the type of the operation, will any investments be needed to catch up on maintenance or upgrade equipment or facilities? This could affect how much you as an incoming farmer will be willing to pay. Is the business profitable? In the next section, we'll be covering key financial statements to help you evaluate this. Note, it can be especially hard to ask this of family members and other existing owners. Consider using scenario planning for what must change or might have to change. Does the business have value beyond the tangible assets? This is unusual, but possible. An example is a profitable retail garden center with an established customer base, skilled employees, and a known brand name. In this case, the intangible assets of the business contribute value over and above the value of the tangible assets because it is a profitable business, which the new owners can continue in its present form. Still, even in this case, the main value of the business may well be in its real estate and other tangible assets. Intangible assets could include existing contracts, customer lists and relationships, trademarks, trade secrets, water rights, or other transferable permits. If any of are of use to you as a new owner, the two parties will need to agree on their value. Determining the value of an ongoing business isn't an exact science. There are a few different approaches to business valuation, some based on financial statements we will cover in the next section. Typically, this is based on the profitability of the existing business. The assessment is based on a review of key financial statements. A key consideration is whether the profitability will transfer. That is, if the profit is too tied to the selling owner, such as personal business relationships, industry experience, or unique talent, then that may make the business less valuable as an ongoing concern. Lastly, if your transfer includes a farm or ranch business, you will have to decide how to hand over management of the operation. This applies to all parties involved, both the owners, the incoming producers, family members working together, or other arrangements. This can be hard, so open and honest communication is critical. The incoming farmers will need to consider whether you have sufficient knowledge and experience to run the farm enterprise. You need to consider all aspects of the operation: planning, production, marketing, finances, and labor. You need to think about whether, as a current owner, the current owners are willing to share their knowledge and expertise, and if so, can this become part of the negotiation? Both parties need to agree on how to hand over the decision-making for all the parts of the operation. Transferring management can happen all at once or over time. Gradual transfer could allow the incoming producers to work side by side with the current owners for a specified period of time to help pass on essential information and skills. We will be covering business tools used to transfer the farm or ranch management in the next module. These include the way you structure your operation and contracts between business owners like buy, sell, and operating agreements. Now it's time to estimate the value of the operation at the assets involved in your transfer situation. If you've already reviewed the first module, you listed the stuff you would like to acquire or transfer to help reach your goals. We're going to use the asset inventory worksheet to start assigning the numbers to the items you identified. If you are reviewing associated curriculum materials as you watch this recording, now may be a good time to review the asset inventory information sheet. After this, you may want to fill out the asset inventory worksheet. List the assets to acquire or transfer. This might include land, buildings, equipment, and or other aspects of the existing farm or ranch business. For each item, include a brief description. For example, if you want to acquire land, note the acres and the current land use. For example, it might be 25 acres of cropland. Consider the condition of each asset. Note which are in good working order and which will require money or time to make usable. You may need to hire professionals or consult with people in your network to make this assessment. If so, make a note. Estimate the value of each asset. See the asset inventory worksheet for more information. And then which can you afford and which are going to be the most essential to your business? Based on this information, prioritize these items. This can help you narrow down your list into the items that are most necessary as you move forward with conversations with the other party. Feel free to pause the recording at this time and review these materials. Now that you've clarified your current situation and where you want to go, it's time to think about what you need to get there. How much will the transfer cost or yield? The reason to assess your financial position is to establish informed consent, essentially to know what you expect to put into the business and to know what you expect to get out of it. As a beginning farmer, you may be told that you may only be able to buy part of the business because of your financial position, and that's okay. Starting with pieces of the operation is a separate, valid way to enter farming. For example, a beginning farmer or rancher buying into a family business may be able to buy existing equipment, but not be able to buy the land. Focus should then shift to controlling the land through leasing or a right of first refusal that moves land ownership decisions to a future time when you as a beginning farmer or rancher can actually afford it. Beyond informed consent, the next best reason to have accurate financials is to be able to ask for help. A business plan is a structured way to ask others for help in achieving your farming or ranching objectives. Now that you have some initial numbers, it's important to assess your financial position to determine what you can afford. To do this, you will create an up-to-date personal balance sheet, create an income statement, and create a cash flow statement and a budget, which is essentially a forward-looking cash flow statement. I'm going to walk through each financial statement and even get you started on developing a budget. I will explain how you can use them to understand how much money you can put toward acquiring the assets, or to understand your income stream and ability to meet financial obligations during retirement and demonstrate the profitability of your business to a potential buyer. I'll also talk about how you can use these same financial statements to evaluate the financial position of the other party to inform conversations during the farm transfer process. Before we get started, I wanted to note that in order to assess your position, it is also important to obtain a current credit report for yourself and any partners. You can get one for free from annualcreditreport.com. I've added information about this website to the resource list. It's critical to identify any negative information that may be on the report and be sure to correct or dispute any incorrect information before you go to a lender. It is also important to inventory any debts or loans you may have. This is part of developing a balance sheet, but it's good to list outstanding debts separately so that you can include more information. In addition to the amount owed, which is what goes on the balance sheet, you will list out the specific terms, interest rates, length of commitment, and payments. Now let's turn to the balance sheet. The balance sheet is a snapshot of the financial health of your personal accounts and or your business at a specific point in time. It lists your assets, the things you own, and your liabilities, the amounts you owe to others. This is an example of a simple business balance sheet. Some farmers combine their business and personal balance sheets, others keep them separate. This information helps you determine your bottom line. It's used by banks or creditors when you take out a loan or rent a piece of land. Your farm transfer may require some kind of upfront investment, whether it is a purchase or lease. So it's important to know and understand your net worth. If you are reviewing associated curriculum materials while watching this recording, now may be a good time to review the sample financial statements. These include different types of farm operations. Take a minute to see what is listed as an asset, the things owned by the producer that have value. For the vegetable producer, examples of assets include cash on hand in a checking account, accounts receivable, tractors and farm equipment, buildings and land. Now look at the listed liabilities. It includes accounts payable, the equipment loan, and the mortgage. If you are reviewing associated curriculum materials while watching this recording, now may be a good time to review the balance sheet worksheet. Take a couple of minutes to list all the things you own, whether they are financed or not. Don't worry if you don't know the exact dollar values. This can be researched and filled in later. Now list everything you owe to others: car loans, student loans, personal loans, mortgages, etc. Just jot down the most significant items. You can complete this at home. Once you have listed your assets and liabilities, you can determine your net worth. This is referred to as owner's equity for a business, subtracting the sum of your liabilities, what you owe, from the total of all your assets. You can use a balance sheet to determine whether you have the resources in hand to put towards the acquisition of the assets, transaction costs associated with inheritance and or investments in the farming operation, including a down payment. If you, as an incoming farmer, the balance sheet will show you how much the owner may owe. This will affect the selling price of the tangible assets. If you are buying the business, the balance sheet can help you evaluate its profitability. The income statement states details where your money comes from and where it goes. It's also known as an earnings statement or profit and loss statement. An income statement shows a business's net income or loss over a specific period of time. And the income statement will generate numbers that you can plug into the cash flow statement. Review the sample income statements. Look at the number of expense categories. When you create your own income statement, be sure you list all of the expenses for your farm or ranch operation. And also note that loans are not classified as income. You didn't earn this money, you borrowed it, and will have to pay it back together with interest. Once you have listed all of your expenses, you can subtract this from your income to determine your net income. You need to use the income statement to assess from an owner's perspective, use it to determine how much money you need to replace after the transfer and demonstrate to the new farmer that the business is profitable and has value. If your transfer situation involves a farm or ranch business, it's good to remember that it's easier to transfer a business that is profitable than one that is losing money. If the business is losing money, you may want to consider a simpler transfer of land and the other tangible assets. New farmers can use their own income statement to decide how much income they'll need to draw from the farm business versus other streams of income, such as a part-time job. You can use the income statement provided by the current owner to assess if the business is profitable and worth acquiring. The cash flow statement shows where the cash comes from and where it goes. It indicates how and when a farm or ranch operation pays its bills. It differs from the income statement because it includes all sources and uses of cash. It has three components. Cash flow from operations is money generated from your business activities. Cash flow from investments tracks money from investment and the purchase and sale of assets. Cash flow from financing tracks money received from or paid back to lenders. Review the sample cash flow statements to see how income from operating activities compares to cash from other sources. You can use the cash flow statement to determine if the operation generates enough cash from the operations to cover new debt obligations. New farmers can use the income statement of the current owner to determine whether the business is viable and has value beyond the value of the tangible assets. To review, we talked about the three key financial statements: the balance sheet, which tells you your current financial position; the income statement, which tells you whether you are making or losing money in your enterprise; and the cash flow statement, which keeps track of where the cash comes from and where it goes. If you can't obtain these key financial statements from the other party, it's a sign of less openness and trust and can make it harder to ensure that each party's needs are met in the transfer. This is particularly true when an active business operation is involved in the transfer. Now that you understand your current financial position, think about your future financial needs. Let's start by considering your personal living expenses. These are the things you need to be able to afford with or without your farm or ranch business. Some of the big ones include housing, food and groceries, healthcare. Others might include retirement, education, vacations, and recreation. Now think about your future sources of income. How much do you expect to come from a farm enterprise versus off-farm sources, including retirement accounts, if you're going to be retiring? The easiest way to develop your budget is to look at your past spending. Review your cash flow statement. Think about what is going to change with the new situation. Next, you as an incoming farmer should budget future business expenses and revenues. You may already have this as part of your business plan. If you don't, plug in expected sources of income and expenses into the business budget worksheet. Key business expenses may include labor, farm inputs like feed, seed, and fertilizer, equipment, and interest. In addition, be sure to detail the costs associated with the transfer. These may include hiring professional advisors. You can get estimates from these professionals in order to assess the future costs. For incoming farmers, the purchase price of land, other assets, and potentially an existing business. Make sure you know how much the assets you want to acquire are worth. You may need to hire an appraiser to value these assets. And for the exiting farmer, provisions for heirs and other retirement needs. And lastly, transaction costs like attorney's fees, recording fees, taxes, financing costs, and so forth. Record estimated streams of income from retail or wholesale sales and any income from government programs. Use the budget to assess the following. Current owners can use a budget to determine the amount they need to net from the sale of the assets to support future needs. Also, whether you'll have cash flow to cover the cost of advisors. If not, this could be built into the selling price. Incoming farmers can use the budget to determine how much income you will need to draw from the farm business and whether it's going to be sufficient to cover living expenses. Also, you will learn whether you have money. You need to learn whether you'll have money in hand or will need to borrow funds to acquire assets and or cover transaction costs. If you are reviewing curriculum materials while viewing this recording, now would be a good time to build a budget using the budget worksheet. If a lot of your expenses remain the same after the transfer, you can use the information from your cash flow statement. But if things are going to change dramatically, you need to start from scratch. To wrap up, the budget is another financial tool. It can help both parties plan for the cost of the transfer, which could include professional advisors, payments to acquire assets, debt service, and improvements in the operation. It can also help estimate how much income is needed from the farm to support personal financial needs. If there is a budget shortfall, the two parties may consider how the incoming farmer could acquire assets in stages or over time. This can help the owner determine how much they'll need to get from the sale of their assets to support their future needs. At the end of the day, working through the financial statements and creating a forward-looking budget helps both parties understand what they need from the transfer. It can also help you identify some of the critical conversations that need to happen to move the process forward. For example, do you agree on the value of the assets? Are both parties willing to share financial information? And can you reconcile shortfalls in future budgets? As part of your work, you will be trying to find out what the other party thinks assets involved in the transfer are worth. Places where numbers are far apart will need further conversation. You will also be completing your budget and determining whether you have money in hand or need to borrow money to acquire assets or expertise, or whether proceeds from the sale of assets or income from an operating agreement is enough to support your future needs. This is another place where missing information may require further conversation with the other party. We will be picking these threads up in modules 4 and 5. Some of these conversations may be difficult. You may need professional support. So let's talk about team members. In this section, we will identify and build your team. As the slide shows, you may need an accountant, attorney, appraiser, financial advisor, or mediator on your team. And given how much you need to know, and the reality that some information is hard to come by and some conversations are hard to have, it's a good idea to consult with these professional advisors to guide you through the different parts of the farm or ranch transfer process. Transferring a farm or a ranch is a big commitment. It's important to pull together your own team who will protect your interests and help you navigate the process. Your advisors can help balance the power in your transfer situation. As a start, these are some of the professionals you will likely want to work with. You may start with any of these, but in the end, you will likely work with several, if not all of them. The following slides will cover each of them. If you're an incoming farmer or rancher, you may also want to engage a farm advisor to walk the property with you, someone like an extension agent from Natural Resources Conservation Service or your local conservation district. You might even want to work with an engineer, especially for structures and buildings. As the slide indicates, you need someone that you can trust, who listens to you and who has farm tax experience. A certified public accountant or a CPA or otherwise qualified accountant is a very important member of your team, and not just to help you buy land, but also going forward to help you manage your business and prepare your taxes. They can help you develop financial statements, understand your short and long-term tax situation, and prepare your taxes. Word of mouth is a great way to identify candidates. Talk to the people you know who are involved with agriculture in the area to help you find a suitable accountant. Ask around. Extension, Farm Bureau, Farm Credit, or other farmers and ranchers are good sources. Finding an attorney who owns farm or ranch businesses. Again, they need to be licensed in your state, responsive, and interested in experience with your situation. The right lawyer for you depends on a mix of the right experience, right personality, and the right price of legal services. Here are some things to consider. For starters, find someone experienced working with farmers and farm businesses. Find out if they have experience working with the kind of operation you have or plan to have. You want to find someone who gets your operation, either because they have experience with similar clients or because they're very willing to learn and listen. Also, find someone who you feel comfortable asking questions of and talking to. If they don't seem interested in understanding your business, or if you don't feel listened to or heard, you need to find someone else. Also, make sure they're responsive and get back to you within a reasonable time frame. You can't expect immediate responses to calls and emails. Your lawyer will likely be busy, but do ask them how long they usually take to respond to clients, such as within 1 to 2 business days or some longer term. It's important to remember that the client-lawyer relationship is a two-way street. Lawyers are looking for models that fit their law practice's business model, and they are also looking to make sure their experience fits the client's needs. A lawyer declines to work with you, remember that it isn't personal, and ask for their recommendation for another lawyer who may better fit your needs. If you don't already have an attorney, talk to other farmers in the area who have hired lawyers, especially those with similar types of operations or situations to yours. If you belong to a farm organization, ask which lawyers frequently serve their members. If you know any lawyers yourself, ask them. Lawyers tend to know other lawyers. You could also call a law school clinic related to agriculture, or you could see if the state's bar association has a directory of lawyers licensed in the state who work on agricultural issues, or whether they have a phone number you can call to ask for referrals. But it's always important to rely on word of mouth, again, talking with others, finding out what their experiences have been. As we mentioned before, you probably will need an appraiser. Getting an experienced appraiser is very important, someone who's licensed, knowledgeable, and knows the local issues. There are several ways that appraisals can be used in farm transfer situations. The most common are negotiating price, approaching a lender about a loan, and in estate settlements. Because assessing real estate values is as much art as science, it's a good idea to use a professional experience with experience valuing agricultural assets and properties. To determine a value, appraisers will review the local agricultural land values and other factors, including the general economy, the local ag economy, comparable sales, how the land is used, and local policies like zoning. When hiring an appraiser, look for someone who is licensed and knowledgeable about farm and ranch real estate, as well as the local conditions. Again, word of mouth is a good way to find someone. Another good way is through the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers, which has a find an expert service. The organization is comprised of more than 2,100 of the top land appraisal and land management experts in the country. Financial advisors are important as well. Looking for someone who has experience with farm and ranch finance, again, who listens and explains things clearly and who you trust is critical. Farmers and ranchers have many skills, but finance isn't usually one of them. While you may be great at running day-to-day operations, you may not spend much time analyzing past as well as current performance, much less making projections for the future. Yet these are important considerations for both parties in a farm-ranch transfer. Especially if your goals aren't all financial, it takes skill and often diplomacy to plan for the future. This is where a financial advisor can help. A financial advisor takes a neutral view of your operation and will give you recommendations for investments, ways to cut back on expenditures, and help you anticipate future needs. They can help you with cash flow analysis and tax planning. When choosing a financial advisor, it's good to look for a certified financial planner. You need to find someone who listens to you, communicates well, and has good interpersonal skills, as well as the education and experience. And it's really important to find someone you trust. Find a financial advisor. You can contact your state or local farm bureau or farm credit institution. Commercial banks often offer financial planning or advising services, but depending on where you are located, they may not know much about agriculture because they don't lend to agricultural operations. As with other potential advisors, it's always good to ask other farmers or ranchers and people you know to find someone who's a good fit for your needs. Mediators are trained conflict management consultants who are perceived as neutral and fair. They are trained in communication and process skills and to respect all parties involved in the conflict or dispute. They do not take sides, make judgments, or issue decisions, but help guide the parties towards a win-win resolution. Mediators can help resolve problems that threaten a farm transfer or a farm's viability. These may be interpersonal or financial problems or emotional conflicts. A mediator can be an important member of your team as conflicts are likely to occur and may derail the transfer or even the viability of a farm. They are especially helpful if the conflict is emotional, complex, and potentially escalating, or if your personal and professional position limits your ability to intervene. When looking for a mediator, look for someone emotionally stable, who has integrity and sensitivity. Look also for good interviewing skills, verbal and nonverbal communication, ability to listen, ability to define and clarify issues, problem solving, and organization. Through the Farm Service Agency, FSA, USDA's Certified Mediation Program provides resources and contact information for certified agricultural mediators by state. If you are reviewing materials associated with this module, now would be a good time to review the Build Your Team worksheet to think about what kind of team you need to have a successful transfer. As a reminder, as we begin to wrap up, here are the 10 key actions in a farm or ranch transfer planning process. Remember, it's not a linear process, and while a certain amount of order makes sense, you likely will find you move forward and back several times throughout the process. For your homework, try to find out what the party thinks it is worth. Places where the numbers are far apart will need further conversation. Formal appraisals can fill in the gaps and inform talks later in the process. So complete the asset inventory worksheet. Complete your budget worksheet. Fill in any information gaps and use the table on the front to assess whether you have money in hand or need to borrow money to acquire assets or expertise, or whether proceeds from the sale of assets or income from an operating agreement is enough to support your future needs. For homework, identify the information gaps. Missing information may require further conversation with the other party. Should also review the glossary of business and financial terms and complete your team worksheet. Thanks for listening. Module 2. assessing your financial situation and building your team. We hope you found this information helpful. Remember that AFT has trained staff who can help you continue on in your process. Look in the description below to find out how to connect with us. Again, thanks for listening.